After months of faux campaigning and at the end of an intense budget week, it's now on. Anthony Albanese and Peter Dutton will spend the next 5 weeks trying to convince Australians they're best placed to lead the country for the next 3 years. This campaign has begun with a big focus on tax, power prices and who's best to deal with Donald Trump. In a moment, we'll hear from our team of political reporters here in Canberra and on the campaign trail. We'll also look at some of the seats that will decide election 2025. Jane Norman begins our coverage tonight with the Prime Minister's opening pitch.
In the pre-dawn light, the Prime Minister sets off to set a date with destiny.
Prime Minister is now leaving the lodge, so this is it.
All designed to play out live on Breakfast TV. A short trip from the Prime Minister's residence to the grounds of Government House. And 20 minutes later, he'd pulled the trigger for an election on the 3rd of May.
Ready to go? You bet. Born ready.
Ready with a direct appeal to Australians.
Your vote has never been more important.
Urging them to stick with what they know.
The world today is an uncertain place, but I am absolutely certain of this. Now is not the time for cutting and wrecking, for aiming low, punching down, or looking back.
Both leaders battling to frame the contest to come.
This election is a choice.
This election is a choice
between Labor's plan to keep building
about who can better manage our economy
or Peter Dutton's promise to cut.
On home turf in Brisbane, Peter Dutton is setting out to make history and become the first opposition leader in nearly a century to turf out a first-term government. His mission, to crystallise voter anger over the cost of living.
The question that Australians need to ask is, are you better off today, is our country better off today than 3 years ago?
While much of the coalition's agenda is yet to come, the two parties enter this campaign with starkly different policies on tax, housing and energy. The common thread is cost of living, the defining feature of this election. The polls are pointing to a tight contest. For Peter Dutton to win, he needs to pick up nearly 20 seats, while Anthony Albanese is holding onto power by the slimmest of margins.
If Labor wins a second term, is it your intention to serve a full term as Prime Minister?
Yes.
The Prime Minister's fighting to hold on to Labor's majority, but he's fending off attacks from the Liberals on his right and the Greens to his left.
With a minority government on the cards this election, this is a once-in-a-generation chance to keep Peter Dutton out and get Labor to act.
After 3 years, it all comes down to the next 5 weeks, competing visions for Australia's future and a lot more of this.
This thing here, your Medicare card.
The writs have been issued and Parliament prorogued.
And those cannons are a signal that there's something else going on today.
As it will each and every day for all 36 remaining. Jane Norman, ABC News, Canberra.
Peter Dutton's campaign will be built on a theme to put Australia back on track. He's bounded out with an energy policy that's infuriated big gas exporters. The coalition's promising to keep a larger amount of East Coast gas for Australia's energy needs, declaring he's standing up for families and businesses, not for gas companies.
Our plan will help get our country back on track.
The track to May 3
There is a better way for our country.
starts at strengthened resolve,
I'm going to stand up for Australians and make the decisions that we need to make.
detours via despair,
Labor has simply failed to deliver. We can't afford 3 more years like the last 3.
and ends up at power.
Energy is the economy.
Peter Dutton's first steps had been taken in Canberra, energised by his team's rousing send-off from a budget reply speech that torched traditional Liberal thinking on governments and gas.
Our gas needs to be first and foremost for our people, and this is just the start.
He's proposing to lead a direct intervention on the mostly exported gas down eastern Australia, forcing more of it to stay for domestic energy needs. Together with plans to pull more from the ground and pipe it around, it comes with a pledge to be held to.
Energy prices will always be lower under a coalition government.
The gas policy has to work for the coalition because its nuclear plan takes decades to deliver. But meddling in markets certainly doesn't work for a gas industry built to fuel Asia's energy demands.
They rely on our gas supply to keep the lights on in Tokyo. So it's really important that we're providing the stability and sending the right signals for further investment.
By almost everyone's reckoning, including his own, Peter Dutton's gas plan is bold. Multinational investors and foreign customers may look askance, economists may shudder. But that's not the point. This is decidedly and deliberately an Australia-first policy.
We're putting gas back into the energy system and we're doing it for Australians. Too many are having to make sacrifices just to afford the weekly shop and pay their bills.
A shopping list of policy offerings to 18 million voters is hinted at on the path to polling day. Greg Jennett, ABC News, Canberra.
Well, tonight the campaign buses are either on the road or fuelling up. Tom Lowry is with the Prime Minister in Queensland's capital, and Olivia Casely will be travelling with the opposition leader. Let's start with you, Tom. Where are you headed?
David, we've landed in Brisbane, which is a bit of a surprise, you'd have to say. Queensland hasn't been seen as the central state, the key state in this election battle. That title probably falls to New South Wales or Victoria. But we sometimes wonder if campaigns are trying to send a message with where they start proceedings. And if Labor and Anthony Albanese do have a message, perhaps it's that they're very happy campaigning in Peter Dutton's backyard. This is, of course, the opposition leader's home city. There is another interesting factor in Brisbane, though, as well, and that's the Greens. They hold 3 seats here in Brisbane. Labor held 1 until the last election. They would love to win that seat back and perhaps 1 or 2 more.
OK, thanks, Tom. Let's bring in Olivia Casely now. Olivia, you're clearly not on a bus tonight. Do we know when Peter Dutton is planning to hit the road?
The opposition, a little slow off the mark, will depart Canberra early tomorrow morning. One of the quirks of the election campaign is we don't know where we're headed. That's a tightly held secret, so not to advantage the other side. We do know, though, that we'll be visiting marginal seats, that is electorates the coalition is hoping to pick up, or those it needs to defend. Peter Dutton does see the outer metropolitan suburbs as his pathway to victory. Economically, they're the hardest hit by the cost of living. Politically, they'll determine the outcome of the election.
OK, Olivia, Tom, thank you. Well, that's just a glimpse into the first day of 5 weeks of campaigning. So which parts of the country will see the most attention? Election analyst Casey Briggs joins us now from one of those potential battlegrounds in Queensland. Casey, there are a lot of seats in play this year.
Yeah, that's right, David, and good evening from the Commonwealth Electoral Division of Griffith. Until 3 years ago, you'd have called this Labor heartland. It's Kevin Rudd's old seat. But in 2022, the Greens won this and 2 other seats in Brisbane. Labor would quite like this seat back, and it's an example of the very many dimensions that this election are going to be fought on. Australia's electoral map is far more complicated and diverse than ever before, and at the moment there are a lot of swing and soft voters. The election, it's going to be competitive, and a look at the electoral pendulum shows you what's at stake.
Labor won the last election with a thin majority off its lowest ever primary vote. After the redistributions, it notionally holds 78 seats. It's a fragile starting point for the government, given polls are suggesting the swing is in the coalition's direction.
It wouldn't take a lot for Labor to lose its majority. Here are all the seats in Parliament. As a rough guide, a uniform swing of less than 1% would see the government lose 3 seats and be pushed into minority. But the coalition needs a lot more than that to form government. It takes a swing of nearly 3.5% for it to become a larger party in Parliament than Labor, and a uniform swing of more than 5%, all the way down to Shortland in the New South Wales Hunter Valley, for the coalition to gain the 19 seats it would need to govern in majority.
And if Labor loses more than 2 seats, while the coalition gains less than 19, we'll have a hung parliament.
And then the attention will be on the very large crossbench. Will the Greens be able to hold on to their 4 seats? They hold this one, the seat of Griffith, but Labor very much want to take it back.
And straight down the lens there.
Could more independents break through? There are strong challenges in seats like Cowper and Wannon, mostly against coalition MPs.
The major parties are fighting to reverse a trend that's been decades in the making. A decline in their vote and a rise in the vote for anybody else.
Essentials polling puts the share of voters who are undecided or open to changing their mind at 48%. And Resolve has found the number of people saying they're not yet committed to a party is nearly double what it was going into the 2022 election.
For Anthony Albanese and Peter Dutton, the quality of their campaigns could perhaps be unusually important. Victory or defeat depends on the next 5 weeks.
So this is an election that will be fought on multiple fronts. The cost of living contest between Labor and Liberal in the suburbs, the inner city battle with the Greens, and then independents on the march hoping to scoop up those who've had enough of the major parties. The ABC's chief digital political correspondent, Jacob Grieber, joins me now. Jacob, how will this election be won or lost?
David, it's still about cost of living. Australians have had a tough 3 years, no question about it. Both sides know this. Both leaders, you have to say, started the day nervously. That's understandable. Both sides eager to spruik their solutions to these problems and how they can help. Peter Dutton's very simple question, are you better off, could hurt Anthony Albanese. But the opposition leader is facing fresh scrutiny over his plans, some of which still lack detail.
Yeah, I mean, Peter Dutton's offering an immediate but temporary cut in fuel excise, and he's arguing he can bring down power prices by pumping more gas into the market. But Jacob, the gas industry and some experts aren't so sure.
The devil's in the detail on this one, unfortunately. It's one of those sort of interventions, the industry says, that can lead to unintended consequences and could backfire. They say there could be less investment in the gas industry, and that would mean less gas. The government equally sceptical. They certainly haven't rushed to embrace this idea, David.
So if voters aren't convinced, Jacob, that this is a workable policy, that would be a worrying start to the campaign for the coalition, I suppose. But look, there's a long way to go in this contest, and there could be wild cards like Donald Trump that may send it in any direction.
Well, the US president, David, as you know, he's due to announce another round of tariffs next week. Now, whether they hit Australia or not, the effects will be felt here. So, yes, Donald Trump, this relationship entering our campaign whether people want it to or not. David, both of our leaders know this, and both of them are treading cautiously.
Yes, to borrow a famous political line, it's the known unknown of this campaign. Jacob, thank you.